Usually we'd go through all the cards and break down their facts and pros and cons, then bash the deck for being so terrible. Unfortunately, there are only so many times we can tell you the same message. The support was abysmal. In fact, one can say it's the worst of all of the hidden arsenal/dual terminal archetypes made. And that says a lot when Duel Terminal has given us some of the most terrible archetypes in the game, like Flameveil, Mist Valley, and Genex. Even with the 3 archetypes I just named, they had more success in competition, while Ally of Justice couldn't even touch a Knight at locals. The issue the deck had was one of the most common issues that some of the earlier hidden arsenal/dual terminal archetypes had: lack of good extenders, searchers, and speller trap card support. Ally of Justice was no more than a big pile of monsters, with weird conditions targeted towards light monsters. Why light monsters though? Easy, because this whole archetype was built solely for Duel Terminal lore. Ally of Justice cards were dark machines made to stop the main arch nemesis in the Duel Terminal world, the Worms, which are light attribute reptiles who operated around flip effects. In the story of Duel Terminal, Worms invaded the world when the tribes of the Duel Terminal were fighting amongst each other, including Ice Barrier, Mist Valley, X-Sabers, and Flameveil. These 4 tribes joined forces to repel Worms and came together to build weapons to help them in their fight. However, due to their poor understanding of each other's views, they made those weapons based on their separate views. This coincidentally, and sadly, explains why the Ally of Justice cards don't work together in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh!, as their lore is based on them being creations without any cohesion with the others. So they're just here to beat a light-based deck that is also laughably bad. The kicker? This deck can't even beat Worms. Though Worms themselves aren't consistent, they have more cohesive support that was, if barely, more consistent than Ally of Justice. Heck, even the other hidden arsenal archetypes had their rare searchers and combo pieces, whether good or terrible, which the allies just didn't have. To pile onto the deck failing to do what their tribal overlords had built them to do, they showed no signs they could compete at any level at all. Having a grudge against light monsters meant allies had no chance against non-light attribute decks. This meant that 2010 and up, Ally of Justice was having a horrible time, as the game had decks like Blackwings and Infernity who were running the format around that time. Gimmicks weren't going to fly around decks who were quicker and could establish a stronger board. Add in the fact that almost any type of disruption could break their board, and Floodgates can wrap this deck up quicker than the fabled wrapping the Drax. However, as dim as their usefulness as a deck was, a few spots of happiness for this archetype are worth discussing. Let's start with one of the most recognized synchro staples of the early 2010s, Ally of Justice Catastor, which was a level 5 dark synchro with 2200 attack and 1200 defense, requiring 1 tuner and 1 or more non-tuner monsters. At the start of the damage step, if this card battles a non-dark monster, you can destroy that monster. Catastor was actually fantastic as a removal for little resources. With its effect, you can remove those pesky high attack powered monsters or high defensive walls that were non-dark type. This made it easy for you to get over monsters like Yugioh Guardian, which was a 2800 attack powerhouse that could snatch monsters and was the go-to level 6 due to its generic materials at the time. It also was great for removing cards with effects that activated if destroyed by battle, like Giant Rat or Pyramid Turtle. Since it crushes those monsters before damage step, the cards would simply go to the graveyard due to the effect of Catastor. We can also throw in that it could remove monsters that couldn't be destroyed by battle, which ruins stall and burn decks that use them to hinder your swings. It even goes through cards like Waboku or Mistbody in case you didn't have access to backdoor removal to deal with them. Catastor also had the honor of being the first monster in its archetype that can actually do its job, and be a good option to fight against light-based archetypes. Lightsworns were a top contender due to their ability to swarm the field and access powerful monsters like Judgment Dragon. They also played a very annoying card named Honest, which was a monster that boosted the attack of your light monster when they attacked or were attacking, equal to the monster it was battling. So by dropping Honest during your attack, anything you battled was destined to be cleared off the field. That stopped when Catastor became an option in every player's deck. Since it pops the monster at the start of the damage step, it completely made Honest a non-factor, since Honest-like effects take place later on in the damage step. So Catastor would play the role of spoiler for light-based archetypes for quite a while. But even Catastor couldn't stop the thing known as power creep. As the game got faster due to quick effects and other types of board removal, Catastor's impact on the game lessened, as battle phase oriented effects just couldn't cut it anymore. Still, Catastor proved his worth as one of the best Ally of Justice synchros, unlike the likes of Field Marshal, Light Gazer, and Decisive Armor, who all saw limited to no play due to better options in the meta. None of them warranted play over synchros like Stardust Dragon, Mistworm, Black Rose Dragon, and many others. Needless to say, Catastor didn't have that worry and proved its worth to the TCG. That didn't stop another card of the archetype from showing its worth in the TCG metagame either, and that was Ally of Justice Cycle Reader. Cycle Reader was a level 3 Dark Machine tuner with 1000 attack and defense. Those stats don't matter. What does matter is this was a quick effect monster that lets you discard it from your hand to the graveyard to target up to 2 light monsters in your opponent's graveyard and banish those targets. With this effect, Cycle Reader became an excellent side deck option due to the rise of light-based decks. Since 09, light and dark decks were highly represented in the game, meta and non-meta alike. Stronger archetypes came along almost every year and had a high number of light monsters. Alongside Lightsworns, Chaos-based decks, Artifacts, Cosmos, Stellar Knights, and Drytrons are the few light-based decks that have brought players misery. Cycle Reader gave you a power option to disrupt your opponent's plays and remove important resources from their graveyard, whether that be snatching a Wolf or nullifying Benten, being used by a Drytron player for cost by removing both cards from the graveyard. Even in matchups with fewer light monsters, Cycle Reader can flat out win you the game. Even if the deck isn't completely light-based, the archetype or deck can have enough important cards that Cycle Reader can hit, if not flat out win you the duel. This makes a sneaky pick in matchups with Eldritch or Burning Abyss, as either removing a Dante or Eldritch can screw up your opponent's plan and have them passing turn back to you. This is why in some matchups it's used over or with other graveyard-based hand traps like Ghost Spell and DD Crow, because Cycle Reader gets the job done depending on the situation. It even came to a point where players were choosing Cycle Reader over Light Imprisoning Mirror, one of the most decorated floodgates against light-based strategies, due to the fact that you can side Cycle Reader without clashing into your gameplay if it also involved light monsters being part of your setup. The major issue with Light Imprisoning Mirror was that it negated all light monster effects activated on the field or graveyard, including your own. With Cycle, you now have more control over how you affect your opponent. So from being an extra hollow in a pack to becoming an underrated side deck option, Cycle Reader makes the good Ally of Justice cards a 2 for 2. The next card is less of a 3 for 3, but more of a 2.5 to 2.5. This card had less impact on the TCG and more on the Duel Links world. Ally of Justice Quarantine is a level 4 monster with 1700 attack and has the simple effect that neither player can special summon light monsters. So why this poor man's Floodgate was so impressive in Duel Links is because their meta was, you guessed it, filled with light top tier decks. During 2021, Blue Eyes and Noble Knights were the top decks in Duel Links. And with limited options to stop the Dragon and the Ultimate Engine of Destruction or the Knights of the Round Table, players had to think outside the box. Quarantine saw play with many decks built due to the game not having the usual ones that we have like Jiaojin or Fossil Dyna. Its 1700 attack is high enough that it beat out most monsters that can be normal summoned by Blue Eyes, as most of their lower level monsters have really poor attack stats. Quarantine even made Ally of Justice seem solid as a deck until it runs into non-light decks and falls back into irrelevance. Quarantine still sees a bit of play as a side deck option in difficult matchups with light-based archetypes. With this, you have at least the best of the best from the Ally of Justice. It's amazing that their terrible lore gimmick let any of their cards be considered helpful in competitive play. However, that didn't stop players from trying to make the deck work. While these monsters' effects were terrible, their attributes and types weren't. Dark monsters are next to light monsters as one of the game's most supported attributes. They have strong generic cards that could be incorporated into almost every dark deck across the board, like Allure of Darkness, which gives dark decks incredible draw power. Machines were more of a strange spot, being known for their ability to OTK due to the help of cards like Cyber Dragon and limiter removal. Unfortunately, both cards were limited due to the powerful presence in the meta. Cyber Dragon was basically the free body you could use as a special summon for everything from tribute fodder to synchro material, and limiter removal was involved in consistent OTKs. However, machines wouldn't stay weak as the Machina archetype was created in the structure deck, Machina Mayhem. Out of all the cards in the structure deck, the only cards worth running were Machina Fortress and Machina Gearframe. Fortress was a level 8 machine that could be special summoned from your hand or graveyard by discarding machine monsters whose total levels equal 8 or more. It also has 2 effects. 1, to target one card your opponent controls to destroy it when it's destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, and 2, it can let you look at your opponent's hand to discard one card from it before resolving an opponent's monster effect that targets this card. Machina Gearframe was a level 4 Earth Machine monster that basically searched out any Machina monster and added it to your hand. It was also a Union monster that it could equip itself to any machine type monster, and if that monster would be destroyed, you could destroy Gearframe instead. With these tools, players attempted to make Ally of Justice operate as a nice beatstick stun deck that can make the occasional synchro play. As you can imagine, the deck was a major flop, and no need to figure out who the main culprit was. Even with the addition of the Machina package, Allure for draw power, coincidentally cards that fit their mold like Black Salvo, and the power of a few limited cards, this didn't negate that the cards were just plain useless outside of the Catastor and a couple of the Ally of Justice tuners, which were just used for the sake of being tuners. Why use powerful tech choices in such a weak deck when there are other decks that can benefit you more when you use these cards? Like how Gadgets had better synergy with Machina. What else could the Ally of Justice monsters do except swing on your opponent? It's one thing for a deck to use tech to boost its playability, it's another thing for the techs to carry the entire deck. After the efforts to make the Ally of Justice the lore force that it is, people took the 3 cards mentioned in this video and left the rest of them to gain dust on their shelves. Ally of Justice Colossus is just a normal monster with bad stats. Ally Mind is another normal monster that's level 5 that happens to be a tuner with bad stats. Ally of Justice Unlimited contribute itself in order to double the attack of an Ally Justice monster you control, which sounds good until you remember this card has no way to special summon itself, and none of the other cards in the archetype can special summon it. Ally of Justice Core Destroyer can destroy a light monster at the start of the damage step, similar to Catastor, except it also has really low stats, so unless it's battling specifically a light monster, it's kind of useless. Ally of Justice Unknown Crusher banishes any light monster after it battles, except it has really low stats, so it'll probably die in that attack. Ally of Justice Searcher is another low attack, low level monster. This time, it's able to discard a card in order to flip one of your opponent's face down monsters face up without activating their flip effect, which obviously allows you to counter the flip monster worms, but oddly does nothing against light monsters, and is kind of a bad effect that really did not need a discard cost. Ally of Justice Cyclone Creator is a level 3 tuner, which allows you to discard 1 card in order to bounce a number of spell and traps on the field equal to the amount of face-up tuner monsters on the field. This card's actually decent, I have nothing bad to say about it. And that's probably because its effect isn't tied to light monsters and instead the amount of tuners on the field, which, since it is one, allows you to bounce always at least 1 card. Ally of Justice Reverse Break is one of the oddest Ally of Justice cards because if a light monster is on the field, it destroys itself immediately. And if it battles a face-down defense position monster, it's able to destroy it at the start of the damage step, so it's never flipped face up. So I guess the intended use of this card was to pop the worms before they got flipped, because if one ever did get flipped up, it would immediately destroy itself, making it oddly one of the worst Ally of Justice cards, which is kind of saying something. Flameveil Magician is a level 4 tuner, which gains 400 attack while you control an Ally of Justice monster. This is technically a Flameveil card, but it interacts with Ally of Justice, so we're counting it here. Ally of Justice Garrote Hold has the effect where if it battles a light monster, it gains 200 attack during the damage step, which, adding up to its 1600, will boost it up to 1800, which, when this card was released, was not even premium stats for a level 4 monster. Ally of Justice Nullifier is a level 4, which negates the effects of light monsters it destroys by battle, including in the graveyard, which just causes some ruling confusions but isn't very good. Ally of Justice Thousand Arms is a 1700 attack level 4 monster, which can attack all face-up light monsters your opponent controls once each. But if it battles a non-light monster, it immediately destroys itself instead. This was actually useful in Ojama Trio OTKs. Ally of Justice Rudra is a level 5 with 1900 attack, which gains 700 attack if it battles a light monster. Now, 700 will boost it to 2600 when it attacks, which is premium stats for a level 5 monster. However, if it doesn't battle a light monster, then it has really bad stats at only 1900. Ally of Justice Omniweapon is a level 5 with 2200 attack, where if it destroys a light monster by battle, you get to draw a card. Then, if what you drew was a level 4 or lower dark monster, you know, all of the Ally of Justice cards, you get to reveal it and then special summon it. As far as destroy cards by battle effects go, it's actually not half bad, but it only working on light monsters destroyed by battle is what makes it bad. Ally of Justice Enemy Catcher is a level 6 with 1800 attack and defense, that, when it's normal summoned, you can steal one of your opponent's face-down defense position monsters until the end of the turn. What's great about this card is that it actually steals non-light monsters just as long as the card is face down. What's not so great is the fact that it requires a tribute. Ally of Justice Cosmic Gateway is a level 8 monster with 2400 attack, where if your opponent controls 2 or more monsters and one of them is light, you can special summon this card from your hand. This effect would actually make it decent if you needed level 8 extenders against decks that you know are going to play light monsters. Otherwise, within Ally of Justice, obviously doesn't do much. And finally, Ally of Justice Thunder Armor. This card has the effect where it gives all of your Ally of Justice monsters piercing damage. However, they thought this effect was so good that they give it a restriction where it cannot be special summoned. and I can assure you this is not good enough for 2 tributes. So, where does the archetype go from here? Probably nowhere. There's proof that some of the hidden arsenal archetypes just need a little support to be viable, if not playable. Dragunity, Fabled, Ice Barriers, and even Gen X are some of the archetypes that have had success or playability when given support. However, Ally of Justice doesn't have any cards that warrant play outside of being meta side deck options. Take Ally of Justice Garodhold. This level 4 only gains 200 attack during the damage step if it battles a light monster. There's no justification for providing more support to help cards like this. Even if you were to get a scenario involving this card, gaining a measly 200 attack bonus is pretty useless. New support just won't be able to clean up mediocre effects, especially ones that backfire completely and punish the player for terrible reasons. If they were to get new support, it would have to be complete retrains, tons of spells and traps, and extra deck options that have synergy and make the gimmick-based effects impactful in matches. They would need cards with DNA transplant-like effects that aren't, well, DNA transplant, or floodgates that help slow the game down for the Ally of Justice to have a chance to win. Unfortunately, even that probably won't save the archetype. Since the Ally of Justice's debut, there are already archetypes that do the job they were trying to do of repelling the light invaders that are way better at versatility, like the Bestials, who are not only doing an excellent job hindering light and dark-based strategies, but also give board presence and resources, rewarding players for interrupting your opponent's gameplay. Current players can see the results for that with how much play they saw in the tier limits format, as Bestials were used as counters to minimize the play by removing important resources from your opponent's graveyard and screw effects that activate in there. In reality, it seems best for this archetype to be left in the vault, as it isn't popular with the community, and if you couldn't tell by this 15+ minute long video, Ally of Justice seemed to be more of a fun tech and hidden arsenal decks for the casual player, who probably didn't even do that because they suck at being tech options too. And that basically wraps up what you probably already knew about the Ally of Justice. They are not worth picking up by any means. They have 3 high points and 18 low points in cardboard and gameplay, and though the future seems dim for our Dark Machine friends, you can never really say in the world of Yu-Gi-Oh! What you can say is that this archetype should be in the rankings of the worst archetypes ever made. With that, the Ally of Justice is welcomed into the Hall of Fail. Hey there, for 1 week only, we have a new mystery bag on the merch store. These Black Friday mystery bags have 5 random pieces of merch from the store, along with an exclusive Spider token card and a chunky holographic Spider sticker. In addition, each one will have either a rare Yu-Gi-Oh card, a replica Pokemon video game, or a Pokemon plush. I made sure to get some copies of Dominus Impulse and Fubulos to give away just for these bags. With 5 random pieces of merch, 2 exclusives, and 1 high value item, you might expect something like this to go for $8,000. But no, it's only $25 plus shipping, and you save on shipping if you buy multiple items at a time, like you want one of the mystery boxes too. Supplies are limited, and you only have through Black Friday week to purchase the bag before it's gone forever.